Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. Let's begin with a brief period of sitting, about 10 minutes. And step one is to be comfortable. So find a way to have a relationship with the ground that feels supportive and grounded, stable. Drop in. And once you drop in and feel the force of gravity holding you in this place, in this time, recognize also the power of the rebound of a downward movement with an upward spring. So whatever part of your body is facing upward, let that feel like it's filling with energy that lifts. And recognize yourself as present in between those opposite directionals. The drop of gravity and the assertive rising up against gravity. And I believe, in my experience at least, that once we acknowledge that up and downness of ourselves, it's easier to feel it. It's easier to allow ourselves to be lifted at the same time as we're allowing ourselves to be anchored. That's the goal. That's the idea, the aspiration, is to be perched in the in-betweenness and in the balance of both. And then we find the breath. We invite the inhales. And we allow the exhales. Returning over and over again to this awareness of breath, to this presence of being here perched between gravity and rebound. The mind will untether itself from this moment and float away or sink down under a pattern of habitual thoughts that distract and sometimes that make us distraught or dissatisfied, disaffected. And then we just retether. We meet the ground and then we rise up from it. And once again, fill ourselves with spacious breath. Acknowledging ambient sound in our environment, and then wrapping that in to the space where we perch between the drop and the lift. So we can be containers for all of the sensory experience that comes naturally with being conscious. And then invite the next few breaths in a little deeper. A little more lively inside as we continue to assert ourselves in the balance of dropping gravity and rising back up against it. Linger with the next cycle of breath in and out. And then gently awaken the body and your conscious mind to the immediacy of this moment and come back into the space. If you'd like to wriggle and stretch, if you're lying down, you can sit up. If you're sitting up, you can lie down for a minute. And we'll have a little chat, which is in this format a one-way chat, but I invite the the thoughts that you have to be not ignored and shared at whatever leisure you'd like to share them. If you're watching from home, feel free to use the chat function. And if you're here in the room, I haven't said this before, but I invite you to contribute as we go along. That's not wrong. That's not wrong. That's correct. That's right. Excuse me. So it's the 3-year anniversary of the you-know-what. The pandemic, if you don't know what I'm talking about. I saw a little blank stare there for a minute. Yes, and I've been thinking about it a lot. I've been thinking about it a lot for 3 years, as I think we all have, and I've been thinking about it a lot in the last few days as I was remembering where we were and what was happening and how we coped, and not just we in terms of our Sun and Moon Yoga community, but we as a family in my personal life, and we as my friends and my neighbors and my social circles and all of it. And it was a lot. And I wanted to find some profundity to share on this at this 3-year mark. I wanted to say something deep and meaningful about what we've learned and how we've come through it. And I came up pretty dry, and I've been contemplating it for a couple of weeks now as the anniversary approached. And I count the anniversary from, the day it was declared a pandemic, which I think was March 12th of 2020, and the day that that we made the decision to close the yoga studio, which was March 13th, and the day, that my then college age kids were on spring break, and we had to decide, are they going to go back to campus or stay home for the duration? And they went back for a little bit, all of it, right? So there isn't really one marker, but it's mid-March. I think we will always associate with this time, and the feeling of spring arriving in spite of all of it was, I felt the one bright promise in those dark times. And I remember walking the neighborhood a lot and seeing the blossoms, the cherry blossoms and the tulip poplars and the forsythia and the daffodils coming up insistently to say, we're still here. We're still doing the things that happen in this cyclical way. But in general, now the retrospect, I feel, is an ongoing process. I know that we found out a lot about who we are as individuals, each one of us. I think we learned how vulnerable we might feel, how healthy we might be, how much risk we might be willing to take, where we lie on the introversion slash extroversion scale. Was lockdown refreshing and comforting, or was it panic inducing and scary? Did we need more social interaction than we could get, or did we find that we were way overdoing it to begin with? Or a little of both was what I personally felt. It was both. We also found out about who other people in our orbit were. I think we found out how much sacrifice other people were willing to make for our safety or for others' safety. We found out how strong certain friendships were or not, and the ground shifted a little bit for many people in many relationships. We found out what kind of resilience, if you have children, our kids had, or our parents. The lessons were so frequently eye-opening, and at the same time, they weren't necessarily surprising. I think we came into a more full expression of tendencies that were already there in all of us. The seeds of truth sprouted and grew. And sometimes what grew from those seeds was shocking or disappointing or worthy of mournful attention, grief, fear, all of it, because the unthinkable became unavoidable. And there we were. And here's the thing, here we still are. It's not done. It's not as hard as it was. Things are creeping back to normal in so many ways, but we're still living it. And because we're still living it, we're still taking stock. And I think that might be why I couldn't think of anything really profound to say, because it's not over. And the trauma, and remember that trauma is defined by how the experiencer experiences it, not by some objective measure. Trauma is what we feel, and we all have, to some degree, some trauma from the unthinkable becoming unavoidable. And so all we can do is be an eyewitness ongoing to what has happened, what is happening, and then what will happen going forward. We can gather information. We can take field notes. We are here for it. We don't have a choice about that. So we just keep watching. We just keep listening. We just keep breathing. We just keep tending to ourselves, to each other, and remember how important it is to acknowledge all of it and just to keep acknowledging it. This is so clearly what the Buddha taught, which was impermanence, which was suffering as a result of mistaking that impermanence for permanence. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that after our next sitting session. But for now, we'll sit with the concept that everything changed in the spring of 2020, 3 years ago, because everything changes. Everything didn't change because one event came in and said, okay, change is now. Change was always and always will be. And so as we sit right now for another stretch of about 10 minutes, the invitation is to use the breath as a mechanism, as a lens for this ongoing change. Things didn't start changing in the spring of 2020. They just changed more dramatically, more obviously, and more quickly than we're accustomed to. That's what happened. Viruses have always been here. Viruses have been trying to kill us since human beings walked out of the ocean. It's not new. And coronavirus, in particular, wasn't new. That also has always been with us. It was this particular one. It was this particular level of virulence. Did I say that right? Virulence. This particular level of contagion and this particular effect that was a bigger change than we were accustomed to. So it forced us to be the eyewitness to change in real time. So let's sit now for another stretch of time and observe the reality of change within our own particular organism as breath comes in and breath goes out. And you can use imagery, if you like, of the ocean ebbing and flowing, tide arriving, tide receding. You can use the imagery of the moon and its cycle. You can link the feeling of breath to these ideas, speed them up if it makes sense, slow them down if it makes sense. You can use the feeling or sound of wind, which is basically audible change of airflow. Or you can just stay with the simplicity of breath. A tactile reminder of the inevitability of change. Zero in on the momentary change that is arriving right now with a breath in and a breath out. And as you watch your discursive thinking mind trail off at times, celebrate that too, that awareness as a recognition of change. Inviting ourselves to be the witness of our changing minds. A non-judgmental, an objective witness, and a kind and patient one that invites the mind back to the moment. There's enough right here to be interested in. Notice inside of one breath cycle, the inner change that you might discern in a tactile way, the connection with the feeling in your body, perhaps a quickening or awakening or a shimmering sensation inside. Maybe a little tingle in the heart, in the belly, or in the face. Be a curious witness to what it feels like to be fully present. And invite the next breath in a little deeper, a little longer. And release the exhale. Come back to your immediate surroundings. Wriggle, shift, stretch, yawn. So, this idea of change and somehow getting seduced into the belief that change isn't really happening or isn't going to really happen, seduced into thinking, or lulled maybe is a better word, of thinking that the way things are right now or the way things will always be. For example, that you are somebody who leaves your home in the morning and goes to an office and does a thing at that office all day and then comes home, and then all of a sudden that's not there anymore. Thinking that you are somebody who goes and stands in front of people and educates them, and suddenly that way of educating people is not there anymore. And the education part is mixed in with making sure that you have the right microphone and the right light and the right devices. And I'm talking to a room full of teachers, so I'm focusing on that aspect of it in the moment. But we all had our certain experiences on being the sort of person who socialized face to face in rooms together with others, and then all of a sudden that's taken away and you have to buy a fire pit and all of the things, right? So believing that we were in a bit of a fog, a bit of a false sense of security, that the way our lives were one day were going to be the way they were for all the days until we decided to change it, not until something else decided to change it for us. This is a prime example of the foundational cause of all suffering in the Buddhist tradition and in the yoga tradition, many Eastern traditions, that the foundational cause of all of our suffering is a form of ignorance, a misunderstanding of the way things are, that we live with this fundamental fuzziness about our identities and our roles and our way of being in the world. And underneath all those layers of identity, ideas about the way things are, is an attachment to that identity, an attachment to those beliefs. And the ignorance, the word in Sanskrit is avidya, and it means without vision, lack of ability to see. And that avidya drives us into a tunnel of misunderstanding. And the most painful moments in life come when all of a sudden we come out of that tunnel and are blinded by the truth of impermanence. So how do we shelter ourselves a little bit from that light? Or maybe better yet, how do we balance the darkness of the tunnel with the brightness of the truth, so that we're living in not a glare and not a cave, but a well-lit space that doesn't blind us and still allows us to see. Maybe that's the profundity of the lessons of COVID, is that we had to balance the light. a little bit better for ourselves. I don't know how to say to do that across the board. I think that's going to be a different answer for every individual. But I do know that getting accustomed to the rhythms of change is one way. And to look at a situation and understand that all I can do is meet that circumstance as it is right now. That's all we can ever do, any one of us, ever, for anything. That's the truth of impermanence. And that's what the Buddha said is the way out of suffering, to see that everything in our lives is simply a manifestation of an effect that has a cause. And how we meet that effect is what will drive the next cause for the next effect. And what arises then will be a product of what we are allowing to arise right now. And on and on and on and on. And the cleaner we can get about seeing those cycles, the less the glare will harm us and the less the darkness will fool us. I think that's all I've got. Let's sit with that. The opportunity is right now with this next breath. We can shape the moment that follows by being present for the moment that is. Take the next breath. If we hold and cling to that breath, we will cease to live, so we have to let it go for the next one. We can observe as the mind wanders off, the dullness of the habitual thought patterns that pull us into a place of dark lack of seeing, and the corresponding harsh brightness of the anxious flashes of worry, new and scary thoughts. And then we can come back to where it feels balanced, where it's a soft light of awareness that's shining from inside. Come back to the soft light of right now. Breathe it in, breathe it out. Perhaps luxuriate in it, not as a way of entertainment, but as a way of simple, comforting presence. Just another couple of minutes, inviting the breath in, nice and full, clean, bright but not too bright. And let it fall away with grace and ease. Maybe 10 more cycles of breath. Stay with them as much as you can. Maybe 3 more. And maybe last one. And if you'd like, join me with palms together in front of your heart. May we all recognize ourselves in the midst of change, and I witness the unfolding and continuous, ever unfolding moment to moment, and be a witness with poise and grace and dignity and kindness, compassion and love. And in the midst of all this change that always has been and always will be, may all beings find ease and freedom from suffering and peace. Thank you so much. Take care.